was putting all my material together, I had a copy of the preliminary agenda for today's excellent conference, and I noticed that Ray LaHood, the Secretary of U.S. Department of Transportation, was listed. And unfortunately, obviously the Secretary is not here, so you have me instead. So sorry to disappoint you in that sense. But what I wanted to do was give you a sense of an initiative that's going on in Washington, D.C. that involves a broad safety community. And there's actually a safety culture component as part of this initiative, and it's called Towards Zero Deaths, a National Strategy in Highway Safety. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview, just to give you some appreciation of what this initiative is about. I think we all know that we've had historic lows recently with highway fatalities, and we know that the past couple years we've had an economic downturn. We don't know, at least I have not seen a definitive study that says the economic downturn has caused this much of the fatalities to drop versus safety laws, safety programs, vehicle safety, etc. I think that research is needed. It's been done in the past when we've had similar economic downturns, but the good news is we are at historic lows right now. Last year, the administration put into effect the Economic Recovery Program. The past few days, I had the opportunity to drive up to Glacier Park with my family. We actually rented an RV. It was quite an experience. When I was driving up there, on a number of two-lane highways, I saw the economic recovery signs. So it's obvious that Montana is also benefiting from the extra dollars that are coming out of Washington to help stimulate our economy. Reauthorization, the big question everyone always asks when you're from Washington is, well, when is it actually going to happen? And I can't give you a magical answer, but I can tell you that it's not going to happen this year, and it may not happen next year either. Fiscal year 12 may actually be the most realistic point in time when we'll actually see new transportation legislation. We know about the issues with the Highway Trust Fund. We have more money going out than we have actually coming in. That's probably one of the biggest reasons why we don't have new legislation at this point in time, is because they have to deal with these challenging issues of how we're going to fund new programs going forward. And then, of course, the topic of today's discussion and tomorrow is safety culture. I think this is really an exciting area. It's emerging. I was at last year's conference. Excellent discussions and debate, and I think it'll definitely continue this year. This is just highlighting the excellent success we've had in recent years in terms of the downturn that I described in the previous slide. We had in 2009 just under 34,000 people being killed. Obviously, that number is still way too big, and that's why we've started this new initiative called Towards Zero Deaths, a national strategy for highway safety. So we have a long way to go, obviously, before we even come close to having no deaths on our highways, but the good news, we've had some success in recent years. So in terms of creating this better future, it's not a U.S. DOT initiative. It's actually the broad safety community coming together to really identify where do we need to go in the future to drive down the fatalities and injuries that occur on our nation's highways. So we're engaging a broad base of all the stakeholders, identifying the critical gaps and needs, and really creating that bold framework to identify what are those key strategies and programs that we need to address going forward. I think the timing is perfect. We have fairly new political leadership in place. I mentioned reauthorization. We have opportunities to put new laws and programs in place as part of the new legislation. And the trend going forward is very uncertain. Eventually, we all hope that our economy turns around and starts going in the right direction. And when we have more people out there driving, doing more discretionary travel, unfortunately, I would expect that we may see the gains that we've had recently go in the opposite direction. Hopefully that's not the case, but I think we're going to have some tough challenges when we see the economy starting to uptick. So in terms of this Towards Zero Deaths initiative, it's actually led by a steering committee. I'm not going to go through all the associations that make up that steering committee, but you can see them here. It's basically the state-based associations that represent all the different areas of highway safety. Tony Giacola is here from National Association of County Engineers. So he's on the steering committee, and also Neil Schuster from American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators is also on the steering committee. The US DOT are basically ex officio members of this committee. So they're basically guiding this whole effort right now. And the way I see this effort being organized is there's really two tiers to it, two tiers to the framework. There's a safety culture piece that we're all here to talk about. And really, I look at the safety culture piece as how do you change Americans' attitudes and behaviors towards highway safety. And then we have all of our existing programs that we can build from. We have that foundation. For example, each of the states have strategic highway safety plans in place. Those have been very successful. The states continue to implement what they've emphasized in those plans. And we have a lot of great laws and programs in place. So we want to build from that. But I think the more challenging piece is the tier on the left side, which is the safety culture piece. That's the part that we're really going to have a hard time addressing, but I think the opportunities are absolutely wonderful in terms of what we might be able to accomplish. So in terms of input that's going into shaping the future course of action, I'll just go through a couple slides to give you some appreciation of what's all the input that we're using to help put together this framework for this new initiative. We have 10 white papers that are being developed. These are really thought papers to stimulate discussion and debate. We actually have some authors here in the room. Nick Ward, who I believe you're going to hear from next, is the primary author for the safety culture paper. And you can see we have white papers covering safer drivers, safer vehicles, emergency medical services. Really everything when you think about highway safety is going to be covered by these white papers. We expect that they'll be coming in shortly over the next few weeks, leading up to a summit, which I'll talk about in the next couple slides. I'm really excited about these white papers. I think we've got some excellent experts in the fields that are really trying to identify what are those bold strategies that we need to address going forward. We've also held 4 webinars, really to get input from the broad base of the stakeholders that exist out there. You can see the different topics that we've had webinars on so far, and we've gotten some good input. I think the first one we really got a lot of great input, and that was the one on safety culture. That was actually the most, I think, well-attended one and actually generated the most discussion. So obviously there's a lot of interest in this particular area. When we gave guidance to the white paper authors, we were telling them, I think the phrase we used was, make sure you think outside the box, but don't think just outside the box, because there are things already existing inside the box that we can take advantage of. So obviously, I think when we say think outside the box, we think about novel countermeasures, we think of technological marvels that we're seeing with intelligent transportation systems. We also think of new policies to advance existing strategies. For example, automated speed enforcement. In other countries such as England and France, automated speed enforcement and red light cameras have been in place for a number of years. And red light cameras have existed in this country for a while, and there's been a number of issues. Automated speed enforcement, we really have had limited implementation of it. So we know these strategies exist out here. What are the new policies we have to put in place to help drive down the numbers? But coming back to what's already in the box, we already know a lot of things work. We know about laws that address drunk driving. We know about safety belts. We know about a lot of programs and laws that work. We just need to get wider scale implementation of some of these things that are already inside the box that all of us know today work. And we just need to get wider scale implementation, which is going to require, in a lot of cases, new legislation, new funding that's directed towards these different safety programs. We know that there are a number of countries that are ahead of us. The United States actually has fallen behind in the past decade. Sweden, I'm just going to highlight as one example. You can see the tremendous progress they've had in the past 30, 40 years. They've had a huge drop in fatalities. And it's because a lot of it has to do with their safety culture. They established Vision Zero, And they really feel it's morally unacceptable in Sweden to have anyone die or seriously injured on their highways. And they've had a number of actions that they've put in place to reach interim targets. Vision Zero is obviously a long ways away, even though they're down to less than 400 fatalities, a much smaller country than ours. But they've set some interim aggressive targets to get them down towards eventually reaching a target of 0. In Sweden, they accept a BAC law of 0.02. Here it's 0.08. There's a big difference, I think, between 0.02 and 0.08. But the underlying culture in that country allows them to pass a law that goes all the way down to 0.02, which is basically 1 drink or less. Speed is very much an organizing principle. The way they design the roads is they take into account, for example, a pedestrian. Most pedestrians can't survive a crash above 30 kilometers per hour. So if there's an area, intersections where they've got a lot of pedestrians crossing traffic, they will make sure they design that roadway so that the vehicles are staying below 30 kilometers per hour. I think in our country we mostly focus on the enforcement perspective when it comes to speed, but it's very much an organizing design principle in Sweden because they realize that if you look at all the different factors that affect highway safety, speed is clearly one of the biggest factors. So they take it very seriously. So moving forward, we have to take what we know already works, and we can take successes from other countries such as Sweden, England, and Netherlands and bring to bear what they've done and benefit from their experiences. I think out-of-the-box elements are also needed, and I think intelligent transportation systems are just one example that really are going to push us into new areas. In terms of next steps, we're going to have a workshop for the Towards Zero Deaths initiative on August 25th and 26th. TRB, the Transportation Research Board, is hosting that event. And we're also going to have a webinar that's going to be associated with that workshop. We can only invite about 120 people to that workshop. And invitations went out to a lot of different organizations over the past week. We don't want to just keep it to the people that are going to actually be physically there. So we'll make sure that we get information out to everyone on the webinar that's going to allow probably about 1,000 additional people to be able to participate through the internet for that workshop. That workshop will serve as another big input into developing these key strategies for moving forward to help develop that course of action for Towards Zero Deaths. And then in 2011, we're going to finalize the national strategy that's going to really lay out the bold framework that we need to address as a broad safety community to start really getting to a better future for highway safety. So that's a very quick overview of an initiative that's really involving all the different organizations involved in highway safety. With that, that's the word from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much.